Every weekday morning, before the sun fully climbed over the skyline, Michael Harris climbed into the driver's seat of Bus 47. The leather of the steering wheel was worn from years of hands gripping it, but to Michael, it felt like home. He had been driving this route for nearly a decade, and in that time, he had memorized not only every bump in the road, but also nearly every passenger's face. As the doors folded open at the first stop, children tumbled in with backpacks too big for their shoulders. "Good morning, Jasmine. How's that math test today?" Michael would ask with a grin. A boy hopped up the steps, earbuds dangling. "Darnell, tell your grandma I said hello." The kids lit up when he remembered their names, their families, their worries. For many of them, Michael's smile was the first kindness they saw in the day. Later stops brought nurses heading to early shifts, factory workers with tired eyes, and office clerks clutching their coffee cups. Michael greeted them all the same. "Morning, Ms. Peters." "How's the knee feeling, Mr. Lawson?" His bus wasn't just transportation, it was a moving community. Conversations bloomed across the rows of seats. Strangers shared stories, laughter, and sometimes silence, but they always knew the man behind the wheel was watching out for them. Michael had a ritual of humming old Motown tunes as he drove, the soft rhythm filling the air between stops. Sometimes on Fridays, he'd sing a line or two, his deep voice warming the morning. Passengers often joined in, and the bus would become a chorus of voices. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, and it made people feel they belonged. To most, Michael wasn't just a bus driver. He was a caretaker, a steady hand, the man who turned a daily commute into something almost joyful. And though his uniform was simple, blue shirt, ID badge, cap pulled low, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who understood the responsibility of guiding lives safely, mile after mile. But in the quiet houses along his route, not everyone saw it that way. To some, the laughter spilling from his bus windows was noise. To others, his familiar greetings were unprofessional. And to one woman in particular, Michael Harris was not a beloved driver. He was a problem that needed to be removed. Her name was Karen Whitfield. Karen Whitfield prided herself on keeping the neighborhood respectable. Her lawn was trimmed with military precision, her hedges cut into neat little squares, and her porch steps scrubbed so clean they almost shone. To her, Maplewood wasn't just a suburb, it was a reflection of her control. And every weekday morning at precisely 7:15, Michael Harris's bus ruined it. She hated the hiss of its brakes outside her corner house, the chatter of children climbing aboard, the laughter that sometimes spilled out of its windows as Michael joked with passengers. Even his voice, friendly and familiar, grated on her. To her ears, it wasn't community, it was chaos. One morning, when a group of teenagers boarded with loud goodbyes to Michael, Karen clenched her teeth so hard her coffee mug rattled in her hand. "Enough," she muttered. She picked up the phone. At City Hall, the receptionist answered cheerily, "Transportation Department, how may I help you?" Karen's tone was sharp. "Yes, I'm calling to make a formal complaint about a bus driver, Bus 47, the one who passes through Maplewood every morning. This man is unprofessional. He sings, he chats up passengers, and the noise is unbearable. It's disruptive to the peace of this neighborhood." "Ma'am," the receptionist replied cautiously, "drivers are encouraged to engage with riders in a friendly way. Is there a specific safety concern?" Karen scoffed. "Safety? He's running a circus on wheels. I've seen him wave at children, call them by name. That is not professional. He treats that bus like his personal stage. If the city has any standards left, you'll remove him. Immediately." The receptionist, startled, typed notes onto the complaint form. "We'll document this and forward it to his supervisor." Karen ended the call with a tight smile. To her, it was a victory. Finally, she thought, someone will put that man in his place. That evening, she repeated her complaint at the HOA meeting, her voice ringing with authority. "If that driver thinks he can turn our quiet neighborhood into a block party every morning, he's mistaken. I've filed a formal report. With enough pressure, we can see him replaced." A few neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Some had children who rode Michael's bus. Others quietly appreciated his kindness, but no one dared challenge Karen openly. Her reputation for making life difficult was well known. What Karen didn't know was that her complaint had already landed on the desk of Michael's supervisor, and while it wouldn't fire him outright, it would set in motion a series of warnings that threatened the very job he loved. The following Monday, Michael was called into his supervisor's office before his morning route. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Mr. Daniels, the district transportation manager, gestured for him to sit. Michael lowered himself into the chair, uneasy. He had never been called in like this before. Daniels cleared his throat. "Michael, we've received a complaint. Actually, more than one. Someone from Maplewood claims you're being too familiar with passengers. Singing, talking too much, making noise." Michael blinked. Talking too much? With passengers? Daniels leaned back, folding his arms. "Look, I know you've been on this job a long time, and frankly, your record is spotless. But the city takes complaints seriously, especially if they come from the right people." His tone hinted at what he didn't say out loud, the kind of residents with influence. Michael tried to keep his voice calm. "Sir, I greet people because they deserve to feel seen. I sing sometimes because it makes the mornings easier, for them and for me. No one's ever told me it was a problem before." Daniels sighed. "I'm not saying stop being friendly, just tone it down. Keep it strictly professional. No singing, no calling out kids' names, no extra chatter. If more complaints come in, my hands will be tied." Michael's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to say that his bus was more than just a steel box on wheels. It was a space of humanity. But he knew fighting now wouldn't help. He nodded once. Understood. When he climbed into bus 47 that morning, the kids sensed something was off. Michael didn't hum his usual Motown tune as he started the engine. When Jasmine climbed aboard, he didn't ask about her math test. When Darnell waved, Michael gave only a stiff nod. The ride was quiet. Too quiet. By the second stop, one of the regulars, a nurse named Angela, tilted her head. "You all right, Mr. Harris? You seem different today." Michael forced a smile. "Just doing my job, ma'am." But the sparkle was gone. The bus felt colder, lonelier. The very thing that had made it feel like a community had been stripped away. That evening, Michael sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. He had always believed in treating his passengers with warmth and respect. Now, he was being told that the very kindness that defined him was unprofessional. He sighed heavily. Maybe this was what they wanted: a silent driver, a silent bus, a silent community. But deep down, Michael knew he couldn't stay silent forever. And soon, circumstances would test him in a way no supervisor, no HOA, no Karen Whitfield ever could. It was a chilly Wednesday morning, the kind where breath fogged in the air, and windows needed wiping before anyone could see clearly. Michael climbed into bus 47, his motions practiced, but his heart heavy. He still heard his supervisor's words echoing in his head. "Tone it down. Keep it strictly professional." He turned the key, the engine rumbled to life, and for a brief moment he considered humming the Motown tune that had always started his mornings. But he stopped himself. The silence in the cabin felt heavier than the cold. One by one, passengers boarded. Jasmine with her oversized backpack, Darnell with his earbuds, Angela, the nurse, rubbing her eyes after a night shift. Michael greeted them politely, but without warmth. They smiled, expecting the old Michael, and when they didn't find him, their own smiles faltered. The ride began as usual, turns he knew by heart, bumps in the road he could anticipate before the wheels touched them. But as the bus reached the long slope leading into downtown, Michael pressed the brake and felt nothing. The pedal sank to the floor. For a split second, panic clawed at him. The bus was full. Children, workers, elderly riders. Cars whizzed past on the intersecting avenue ahead, horns blaring. If he did nothing, the bus would barrel straight into traffic. Michael gripped the wheel tight. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice carrying the authority of someone who knew lives depended on him. Gasps and screams filled the bus. A child began to cry. He steered hard, scanning the road ahead. To the right, a row of parked cars, too dangerous. To the left, A crowded crosswalk. Unthinkable. Straight ahead, the red light and an endless line of vehicles. Then he saw it. A narrow stretch of empty lot, just past a wooden fence. It was a hard angle, but it was their only chance. Michael yanked the wheel, forcing the bus off the main road. Tires screeched, the heavy frame groaned, and passengers clung to their seats. With a final slam of the emergency brake and all his strength on the wheel, he guided the bus through the fence and into the dirt lot, where it shuddered, bounced, and finally screeched to a stop. Silence. Then sobs of relief. Laughter. Someone shouted, "We're safe!" and others echoed it. Passengers rushed down the aisle, hugging one another, then turning to Michael. "You saved us," Angela whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. "If you hadn't—" Michael exhaled, his hands trembling now that the danger had passed. He gave a faint smile. "I just did my job." But by noon, it was clear this was no ordinary day. Parents arrived at the lot, clutching their children with trembling hands. Reporters soon followed, cameras flashing, microphones outstretched. "Bus driver saves dozens in brake failure incident," the headlines began. Michael Harris, the man Karen had tried to silence, had just become the city's hero. By the end of the day, Michael's name was on everyone's lips. News vans crowded the school parking lot where the passengers had been dropped off safely. Parents wept openly, hugging their children and rushing to shake Michael's hand. "Thank you, sir. You saved my little girl," one mother cried, clutching Jasmine so tightly the child squeaked. Another father, a construction worker still in his boots, wrapped Michael in a bear hug. "You kept my boy alive. I owe you everything." Michael tried to smile, though the attention felt overwhelming. "I was just doing what anyone would do," he kept saying, his humility almost frustrating the reporters who begged for a bigger soundbite. The passengers, however, would not let the story shrink. Angela, the nurse, spoke firmly to a local journalist. "You can call it luck if you want, but that man chose to act. He made a decision in seconds that saved all of us. He's not just a bus driver, he's a protector." Darnell, the teenager with the earbuds, posted a shaky video from inside the bus as it swerved. His caption read, "Driver Harris is a real hero. Never forget today." The clip went viral overnight, racking up thousands of views, then millions. By evening, local television ran segments titled, "Bus Driver Prevents Tragedy. Dozens Saved in Brake Failure." Michael's face, calm, steady, still in his city uniform, flashed on every screen. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her living room, jaw tight, watching the news unfold. Just days earlier, she had demanded Michael's removal for being too friendly, too noisy, unprofessional. Now, the city she thought she controlled was hailing him as a hero. This is ridiculous," she muttered, snapping off the TV. But even she couldn't deny the sight of the parents crying with gratitude, the children waving homemade signs, the crowd that had already begun to gather outside the transit depot, chanting his name. "Harris! Harris! Harris!" Michael, exhausted, returned home that night to find flowers on his doorstep, loaves of bread, handwritten cards from children scrawled in crayon, "Thank you for saving us. You're my hero." He sank onto his porch steps, holding one of the cards in his hands. For the first time all day, his composure broke. Tears slid down his cheeks. Not of fear, not of relief, but of something deeper. He had always seen himself as just a bus driver. But now, the city saw him as something more. And tomorrow, the whole country would. The morning after the accident, Michael's story was everywhere. Front-page headlines, radio talk shows, television anchors replaying the viral bus video over and over. Words like heroism, split-second decision, and lives saved flashed across screens. But buried beneath the praise, another story began to surface. City records showed that complaints had been filed about Michael Harris weeks earlier. Sharp, formal letters had described him as unprofessional, a disturbance, and unfit for his job. Reporters digging deeper discovered that those complaints had come from a single source, Karen Whitfield. By noon, Her name was trending online alongside Michael's. Karen tried to get ahead of the storm. Standing on her perfectly manicured lawn, she gave a tense interview to a local news crew. Her pearl necklace glinted in the sunlight as she folded her arms. "I never said he wasn't a capable driver," she insisted, her tone sharp. "I simply wanted the neighborhood kept peaceful. The noise, the singing, it was disruptive. My complaints were about standards, not about him personally." The reporter raised an eyebrow. So, to be clear, you tried to have the man who saved dozens of lives fired because you didn't like the way he greeted his passengers?" Karen's smile faltered. "That's not, well, you're twisting my words. Of course, I'm glad he did the right thing yesterday, but rules are rules. A bus is not meant to be entertainment." The clip went viral within hours, but not in the way Karen hoped. Social media erupted with outrage. One tweet read, "Karen wanted to silence the man who saved our kids. Let that sink in." Another, "She called his kindness noise. We call it humanity." Memes spread, painting Karen as the woman who wanted a hero gone. Her own neighbors avoided her, some crossing the street rather than make eye contact. Meanwhile, Michael stayed quiet. He didn't need to say a word. The people were speaking for him. Parents, students, commuters, all stood up to defend the man they trusted. They flooded the city with letters of support, demanding he be recognized, not punished. The harder Karen tried to defend herself, the smaller she looked. Her complaints, once filled with authority, now sounded petty, even cruel, against the backdrop of Michael's courage. And as the national news picked up the story, it became clear Karen's attempt to erase Michael Harris had only made his name shine brighter. Within days, Michael Harris's story traveled far beyond his city. National news outlets ran segments on the bus driver hero, showing his steady hands gripping the wheel in the viral video, the fence he had crashed through, and the dozens of passengers he saved. Morning talk shows replayed interviews with grateful children. One small girl looked straight into the camera and said, "Mr. Harris saved my life. He's my hero forever." Soon, Michael was invited to New York to appear on a primetime television program. Sitting under the studio lights in his neat city transit uniform, he shifted uncomfortably in the chair, unused to such attention. The host leaned forward. "Mr. Harris, in those terrifying moments, what was going through your mind?" Michael cleared his throat, speaking softly but firmly. "All I thought about was the people on my bus. They trusted me to get them home. That's my job, and I wasn't going to let them down." The audience gave him a standing ovation. Back in his hometown, the mayor organized a special ceremony on the courthouse steps. Hundreds gathered, families, city officials, children waving handmade signs. A brass band played as Michael stood on stage, humbled, his cap in his hands. The mayor presented him with a Medal of Civic Honor. "This man embodies the very best of us," the mayor declared. "He showed courage, quick thinking, and above all, love for his community." The crowd roared with cheers. Some chanted his name, "Harris! Harris! Harris!" Others simply wept, overwhelmed with gratitude. Meanwhile, Karen was nowhere to be seen. Her name had become a byword for pettiness, a reminder of what happens when rules and appearances are valued over humanity. In whispered conversations and online threads, people laughed bitterly. She tried to silence him, and he became a national hero instead. That evening, Michael returned to his modest home to find his porch once again covered with flowers, cards, and even loaves of bread. Children had drawn pictures of buses with the words, "Our hero," scrawled in crayon. He sat on the steps, holding one card in particular that read, "You made us proud. You showed us what courage looks like." Michael looked up at the sky, the weight of the day finally sinking in. He hadn't sought recognition. He hadn't asked to be anyone's hero. But his actions had spoken louder than any complaint ever could. And across the country, people now knew his name, not as the bus driver Karen tried to erase, but as the man who saved lives when it mattered most.